Say I didn't sound very good.
You sound better now.
Like normal, not amplified.
Right.
I have an agenda. I have some stuff that I want to get through, and I have one thought to kind of read through this, to kind of give the this is where we're going with this. Stay tuned to get the info you want, and then maybe go back and touch on a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
So, what I want to talk about today is all of the acronyms we use: the MAF, the FAF, the MAP. With the MAP and the MAF and the FAF. So many acronyms.
Got it.
Yeah.
And we're gonna try to just define those, and then we'll get back into some.
Right. So let's talk about those, and then we're gonna figure out, once we talk about those, how we apply them, what the grand picture is, and what we are gaining and what we are not losing by training this way.
Sure.
Does that make sense? So let's talk about first. I want to go into what is MAP. Every day we come in, last week, this week so far, we've come in and we've seen that MAP workout as our WOD.
Sure. So MAP stands for Maximum Aerobic Power. This is used a lot in the endurance world, such as cycling or running or rowing, cross-country skiing.
And that is just a work to rest ratio.
Yeah, so lots of people much smarter than me have spent lots of time working intervals into their training, right? So a MAP 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. If you spend a lot of time training those certain or specific time domains, you'll get better at a certain distance, say of running.
Okay.
So, for example, if we train a whole bunch of MAP 5, which is a 3 minutes worth of work to a minute rest ratio, sometimes 2 minutes rest ratio, depends on what the goal is, that would get you really good at, say, a 12-minute race or a 12-minute test or event.
Okay.
MAP 10, work is to prepare you for, an hour plus.
So I wrote down, why would we use a method made for endurance athletes in CrossFit? CrossFit is stereotypically not an endurance sport.
Sure. Right. It's generally when you are doing traditional CrossFit, right? It's meant to be done at high intensity, right? And that's fantastic. It'll get you really fit really fast, but you miss some valuable aspects of training that if you skip the aerobic training, you'll end up topping out. You'll reach a ceiling or a plateau in your competing or your racing or your testing.
So let's kind of go back to that aerobic word. So MAP is maximal aerobic power. I think of that as, the most you can put in these time domains aerobically.
Sure.
Now, we also use the word MAF, which is your maximal aerobic function. And we've also started to use the FAF, which is your functional
aerobic fitness.
Right. Let's talk about those since we have that word aerobic up on the table.
So let's first define MAF and where that came from. Okay, so MAF stands for Maximum Aerobic Function. Mm-hmm. And that's essentially a score.
Okay.
That's your most ideal heart rate to be able to become the most efficient aerobic athlete as possible.
Okay. So
that's based off of Dr. Phil Maffetone, who was a coach and a trainer for Mark Allen back in the 80s. And he discovered that by watching people's gaits in running, that their perfect MAF score was 180 beats minus their age.
Okay.
Now, this is not the ceiling of their aerobic ability. It's just their most efficient. It's the ideal fat burning heart rate. It's a heart rate that once you get good at it, you can get a lot of work done at that heart rate without creating inflammation and fatigue.
So what we're trying to do with that number is when typically, your endurance running or cycling athletes would use that to get long distances, we're trying to take that number and apply it to CrossFit,
yes.
which, why not? Why not try to get as much?
Right. There's a whole bunch of benefits from staying aerobic during doing CrossFit. Like I kind of touched on a little bit there, you create less inflammation, less soreness, but you're able to get more reps. You're able to train for longer time domains. Mm-hmm. You're able to slow down, focus on your technique and your positions. Just creates a long-term plan for an end goal other than just winning the whiteboard for the day.
Okay, so we use this MAF number then. That's the 180 minus your age, or 185.
Let's call it a score.
Your score.
Yep.
That's the range you want to stay in. I think we're pretty good at figuring that out and figuring out how much work we can do right now in there.
Yeah, and we're trying to get people to stay at that. And I use the Maximum Aerobic Power to help people train that MAF score.
Right.
To get better at it.
So every day we can come in, we see the MAP on the board. We know it's going to be a specific time domain, and we know that that's a heart rate day that we're going to be staying in here. Now,
Correct.
That being said, for the last week and a half, we have trained that every single day. But that's not necessarily going to be the case going forward, that we're not going to have this. Why not train this every day?
Yeah, so, I mean, for the average person, that's just doing CrossFit or exercising or training for general overall health, there could be an argument that you should just do this every day.
Sure.
Eventually, you'll get really, really good at it, and you'll be really fast, and you'll feel amazing all the time. Now, for somebody that wants to continue to, or wants to hurry up the progression, let's just say, you can add some threshold work, some Aerobic Power work, and things like that, because that is going to stretch your ability to perform work at your MAF. It's a short term. You'll have to eventually come back to your maximum aerobic function heart rate and then build on that again. So, and we will do that. We are progressing from MAP 1 all the way to MAP 10, and we're just going to do by week. And that's going to teach people a lot about what they're capable of for these certain time domains. We're going to go all the way to 10. We're going to spend a week at 9 and 10, and then we're going to come back down.
Okay.
During this whole time, I'm going to add some small tests in there, some fun workouts that kind of will give a little bit of a reflection to those time domains that we're working on, and to keep it fun.
Right. Keep that carrot that it is part of something.
Yeah. But ideally, you would spend, like endurance athletes spend 90% of their time in aerobic training.
Sure.
And very little in threshold or VO2 max training. So,
and I bet CrossFit athletes, the professional ones that we see on social media that we all idolize, yes, they go on the screen and they put out these, performances that are phenomenal, but they also have to train. Yeah. And I think the best way to look at those... And
they're also like, they have the ability, many of them now that's their full-time job. So they spend... 6-8 hours training, and then the other 4 stretching, eating, recovering.
Oh, sure.
Right.
So I think that the best way to look at this on those days that you see, an acronym workout, the MAP workout, or we must keep under our MAF, or in our FAF zones, use those days as training. I likened it last week to eating fish oil. That it isn't necessarily fun, but it's really good for you.
Right.
And it's
not easy.
It's a training day. This is when you're like trying to get better, not just trying to win for the day.
Sure. You're building a foundation to continue to progress.
So I have a couple other these low-level hums you hear going around the gym. And we have if I train this way all the time, will I lose my ability to CrossFit? And I'm going to use CrossFit as a verb.
Sure.
In that, like, go all out, that high intensity. And then on the flip side of that, or in partner with that, will I lose my strength? Because a lot of people are having to personalize their workouts with less weight.
Right, to keep in their MAF score.
To keep in their MAF zone because, maybe moving heavy weight over large sets or long periods of time stresses their body out.
So the question is will I lose my strength if I do a bunch of aerobic work?
My strength and my intensity, those two things.
Yeah, so there's 2 answers there. As long as you're continuing to train your strength, right, and use that as your opportunity to get stronger, eventually your weight that you'll have on the bar in your MAP training will go up.
Yeah.
Okay. In regards to being able to work in threshold, your ability to endure that pain of threshold while you're only training aerobic work, yes, you're not going to be as good at flushing out lactic acid, right?
Right.
But what's going to happen is your ceiling, through doing so much aerobic work, your ceiling for threshold is going to just continue to rise. So just getting there is going to be much more difficult. And you're just not going to need to go there as often, is the goal and the hope. Right now, I understand, like, when I throw these fun workouts in and you want to go full CrossFit and you're like, gosh, I just can't suffer like I used to. Well, yeah, but I'll bet if you look at your times, you're not really much slower than you used to be. If you were to just slow down and stay in your aerobic zone, your times are probably very similar to your old threshold now.
Let's talk about that a little bit. And that I've had to really, talk it out in my brain and figure out what.
I wonder what that sounds like.
Oh, it's very busy. There's a lot of chattering. Things exactly like that I cannot, and I mean, I'm thinking about myself. I've never been somebody who has wanted to be in that threshold or VO2 max zone.
Right.
Now,
you've trained a lot in the aerobic world you did with your running in your past.
Right. So then I'm trying to think. Yesterday I went for a bike ride and I ended up having to pull Midge in the trailer up some hills, and I got really uncomfortable.
Sure.
And my husband was giving me a really hard time about, like, I thought you were fit.
Sure.
And I felt really sorry for myself for a while, but then I started thinking about that in reference to CrossFit workouts. I come in and we do a workout where suddenly you don't have to stay in your aerobic zone and you're getting up there. We can't compare every single workout to every single workout, right? Even the ones that we do that are not MAP workouts are designed in a way to train us in according to how we're training now. So when we say, like, oh, I just don't know how to get up there and sit anymore, did we ever? The workouts we did before that were ugly and sucked, did we feel like, yeah, I was really good at getting up there into the suck? Well, it sucks no matter what, and it just depends on the individual workout.
Well, part of it now is that we've taught people how to continuously move. So they're used to not having to stop and put their hands on their knees in a workout.
Right.
So now when they do it, they're like, what's wrong with me? When really, they used to do that all the time, or much, much more, in fact.
We've just gotten used to doing so much volume in a row in a comfortable way.
Yeah.
If we could retest, if we could do the same workout, every single day.
Sure.
But do it a different way, I think we would see that we're getting a lot more work done in those higher zones, and we're portioning out our rest.
And we have been testing that, and we're starting to see that and show that. It's just a process, right? This is, when people come here, it's not for, the 6-week challenge, get fit in 6 weeks. This is, we're doing things that if you stay with this day in and day out, you will not recognize yourself in a year, 2 years. You will be capable of so much more than you ever would have imagined and not be injured. You'll feel amazing. You'll be as lean as you've ever been, and you'll be looking forward to tomorrow. And
as much as you want to compare yourself to yourself,
well, if you're going to compare yourself to yourself, at least be realistic. Like, I hear the term, I just feel like I can't do this anymore. And like, at some point, we've got to stop talking about feelings, right? And we've got to get real.
Yeah.
Like these same athlete that says, I feel like I can't do that anymore. And yet we look back, all of their strength numbers are going up. Right. The last time they did this workout, we were 2 minutes slower than we were today, but I just don't feel good when I do it. Well, I'm sorry you don't feel good when you go,
Did you ever feel good? Really?
Right.
I mean, really think about it.
But you're faster, you're stronger, you're leaner, you're healthier, you sleep better. What's the problem?
Right.
Right? Like, at some point, we've got to stop talking about feelings and move on from that.
And that's kind of what I wanted. I kept, I have this chart in front of me, and that's where I kept going, is the feedback that I'm getting training this way. Training in your aerobic zones ends up with different feelings. You know,
Well,
maybe it feels easy. Maybe it feels like you're not going hard enough. But
Sure.
the grand plan here is not that it's just making everything easy.
Right.
It's making your ceiling that much higher.
Correct.
So that the harder feels just as hard as it ever did, but actually it is.
Correct. If you watch your really aerobic athletes that we have here that are super strong and super aerobic, when we finish some of these workouts and you can ask them, was that easy? Their answer isn't, I wouldn't call it easy.
Right.
Right? It's just, they're moving fast, being aerobic. Eventually that gets tiring.
Right.
So you just have to get better. Like, as simple as it is, for me, one day I was doing thrusters, and as soon as I did 3 thrusters, my heart rate skyrocketed. And I'm like, man, what's going on? And somebody said, it looks like you just need more thrusters. And that's exactly right.
Right.
You just need more volume of that movement and get better at it to become more aerobic, to make all of this easier. That's
Right.
the thing that we've got to keep in mind. This MAP programming is to make everything easier. So you can continue to get stronger. You can continue to get more fit without the extra unneeded stress and strain on your body.
Right. So some days are going to be hard in different ways than they ever were before. You
Yeah.
know, your hard days may not be you laying on the floor. The hard days may be you trying to get as much work done as possible
Right. It's
in
hard
your
to-
zone to train yourself to do more work in that same zone
You got it.
soon.
Yeah, it's hard in a different way.
Right.
Right? When somebody says, this doesn't make any sense. This is so easy to me. I'm like, well, if it's so easy, then why is your heartbeat 10 beats higher than it should be?
Right.
It's hard in a different way. And if you are keeping the mindset of, I am training for the big picture and for the future, and not just for sore legs the next day.
What is your why? Why do you come into the gym every day?
Yeah.
Do you come in to, get your workout? And if that is like, yeah, I want to come in and get my hour of intensity. What's your big picture why of doing that? You want to be really
Sure.
good at an hour workout? Because that's what you'll get. But if you train every day.
You'll just be super aerobic. And, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can take this to the next level when we start discussing more of becoming a fat burner and things like that. Because all of that plays a role in your ability to perform MAP training really, really well.
Right.
Right. So the more efficient metabolically you are, the easier and the more fun this stuff gets.
Oh, for sure.
Because keep in mind, right, we've talked about 300 wall balls. Just because I can make 300 wall balls easy for you doesn't mean that those 300 wall balls don't count.
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
There's still 300 wall balls. Just like when somebody goes for a 10-mile run and somebody's like, oh, it was an easy run. Like you would never say to that person, oh, you didn't get anything out of that. That doesn't count.
That wasn't a workout.
Right.
That's
Just
part of their
because-
training plan.
Right. Just because it was easy for them.
Right.
And so we need to keep that in mind with all of this programming training. We're thinking long term here.
Awesome.
What would Claire say?
Just do it right, people.
All right.
Good talk.
Nice job. Nice job, Kate.
Man, I could have talked about that forever, but I have to go
Yeah, it's
coach
fun.
more.
You have to coach.
Yeah. It didn't quite go where I wanted it to go, but